Okay, so we're back and ready to, dive deep like we always do. And today, we've got a pretty interesting, a pretty unsettling topic, actually.
Yeah.
It's the Smiley Face Killer theory, and we're gonna try to figure this thing out. What we have is some excerpts from a podcast episode called Unsolved Crime Tapes: The Smiley Face Killer Theory, Coincidence or Cover-Up.
Right?
And basically, the idea is this. You've got these young guys, right, who go missing after a night out. Pretty normal, right? But then they turn up dead in the water, rivers, lakes, that kind of thing. And get this, there's often smiley face graffiti found nearby.
Huh. Smiley faces. Well,
The
that's
CP, right?
yeah, creepy for sure. But also, I mean, smiley faces are everywhere, aren't they? So how do we know? How do we even begin to figure out if it's just a coincidence or something more,
What's that?
something sinister?
Yeah. That's exactly what we're going to get into today. Is this just a string of horrible coincidences, or is there something darker going on? Is there a connection between these cases? Could there be, some kind of organized effort behind it all?
Hmm.
All right, so to start this off, we're going back to the late 1990s, early 2000s. That's when these two retired NYPD detectives, Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, they started noticing something. They were seeing this trend, this pattern of young college-age men turning up dead in rivers and lakes, mostly in the Midwest and Northeast.
Hmm. College-age men, huh? So we're talking what, like
Yeah.
18 to 22, something like that?
Yeah, around that age. And the thing is, these weren't the kind of guys you'd expect to just, fall into a river and drown. They were athletes, often good students, guys with bright futures.
Hmm. So not exactly your typical, how do I put this, high-risk individuals.
No, not at all. Like, good kids basically.
Right.
And they go out for the night, have some drinks with their friends, and then poof, they're gone.
Hmm.
And then weeks later, their bodies show up in the water. And like I said, there's often this smiley face graffiti nearby.
Right, the smiley faces. So that's the thing that really catches their attention, right? These detectives.
Right, exactly. Because on the one hand, it's like, okay, smiley face graffiti, that's not exactly uncommon. You
Yeah.
see it everywhere, right? But on the other hand, it's like, come on, how many times can this really be just a coincidence?
Yeah. I see what you mean. It's like,
Yeah.
is it just random, just bad luck, or is it a signal? Is it a message?
Right. And that's where Gannon and Duarte, they went with their gut, Their instincts told them that something wasn't right. They started to think maybe this wasn't just a bunch of random accidents. Maybe there was something more organized going on, something way more sinister.
Organized. So they're thinking like a group, like multiple people working together.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were thinking. Like maybe there are, serial killers operating across different states and they're targeting these young men.
Wow.
And they're smart about it. They're staging these deaths to look like accidents, like drownings.
So like the smiley face, that's almost like a calling card.
Yeah, that's how they saw it. And get this, they even gave this whole thing a name, a really chilling name, the Smiley Face Killers.
The smiley face killers. That's a pretty evocative name.
Yeah, it sticks with you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But before we get, too far down that road, let's back up for a second and look at some of the specific cases that they were looking at, okay? Because that's how they built this theory, by connecting the dots between these different cases.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So one of the cases that really stood out to them was the case of Patrick McNeil. He was a student at Fordham University in New York City. This was back in 1997. He went out with some friends one night, and then he vanished. Weeks later, they found his body in the East River.
Okay.
Officially, they ruled it an accidental drowning.
But
Gannon and Duarte, they weren't so sure. They started digging into the details, like where was he last seen? How far was that from where they found his body? Did the timeline make sense? Things like that.
yeah, they're looking for those little things that don't quite add up.
Right. Those inconsistencies that maybe the original investigators missed. And then you've got Chris Jenkins. He was a student at the University of Minnesota. In 2003, they found his body in the Mississippi River. At first, they said it was an accident, just like with McNeil. But then, get this, they actually changed it later. They officially reclassified it as a homicide.
Wow, they changed it. That's pretty significant.
Yeah, it is. It means they found something, some evidence that made them rethink the whole thing,
So I mean, does that mean that maybe some of these other cases, the ones that are still classified as accidents, maybe they're wrong too?
That's what Gannon and Duarte were thinking.
Makes you wonder.
Okay, and then there's Dakota James. He was a student at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. He went missing in 2017. They found his body in the Ohio River 40 days later.
40 days. Wow. Okay, so at this point, these detectives, are they actively looking for cases like this, or are they just, coming across them?
I think it's a bit of both, like once they started seeing this pattern, they started looking for more cases that fit, but I think some of them just kind of came across their radar too.
Makes sense.
Anyway, back to Dakota James. He was a strong swimmer, apparently, but they still ruled his death an accidental drowning. But his family, they didn't buy it. They were like, no way.
What didn't they believe?
Well, for one thing, the timeline didn't make sense to them. 40 days in the water. And his body, according to them, it didn't look like it had been in the water that long. They thought maybe he had been held somewhere, kept alive, and then dumped in the river later.
Kept alive.
Oh, man.
Yeah, pretty creepy stuff. And again, guess what? Smiley face graffiti found near where they found his body.
Always with the smiley faces. It's I know, right? And it's not just these three cases, okay? Gannon and Duarte, they've compiled a whole bunch of cases like this. They've got files and files.
So what's the common thread here? What are we seeing over and over again?
Okay, so it's usually a young, white male, college-aged, athletic build, good student. They go out for the night, have some drinks, and then they disappear. Later, their body is found in a river or a lake, and almost always there's smiley face graffiti somewhere nearby. Does that sound like a coincidence to you?
I don't know. It's a lot of similarities, a lot of shared characteristics.
Right, and that's what Gannon and Duarte are saying. They're saying this isn't random. This is a pattern. Someone or some group is doing this. They're targeting these young men, and they're making it look like accidents.
Okay, so let's talk about this theory. How would this even work? How could they pull this off?
Well, they think that maybe this group, they're using the dark web to communicate, to stay anonymous, to coordinate their activities.
Yeah, that makes sense. The dark web. It's like a hidden part of the internet, right? Hard to track.
Right. And it's often used for illegal stuff, like drug deals or worse.
Right, right. So they're thinking it's like a murder club almost.
Yeah, like a secret society of killers.
And what do they get out of it? What's the motive?
That's the thing. Nobody really knows. Some people think it's just for the thrill of it, like they get a kick out of killing. Others think maybe it's something more ritualistic, something darker.
Yeah, I can see that. But how do they actually do it? Like, how do they get these guys? How do they make it look like accidents?
Well, they think maybe they're stalking these guys, following them, figuring out their routines. And then they grab them when they're vulnerable, when they're drunk, maybe, and then they kill them and dump their bodies in the water.
It's a pretty elaborate plan.
It is, but it's also pretty terrifying, right? Like, how do you even protect yourself against something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's scary to think about, but hold on a second. What about the FBI? What do they say about all this?
Yeah, that's important to mention. FBI actually looked into this whole thing back in 2008, and they basically said, no, we don't see it. We don't think there's a serial killer or a group of serial killers responsible for these deaths. They think it's just a bunch of accidents, nothing more.
So they're dismissing the whole theory.
Pretty much, yeah. They say the smiley face graffiti is just a coincidence. They say it's such a common symbol that it doesn't mean anything.
Okay, so you've got these two sides, right? You've got Gannon and Duarte saying this is a pattern, this is organized, and then you've got the FBI saying, no, it's not, it's just random. So who do we believe?
Right. I mean, the FBI, they have a lot of resources. They've done their own investigations, so it's hard to just ignore what they're saying,
Mhm.
But on the other hand, Gannon and Duarte, they're experienced detectives. They've seen a lot, and they're convinced that something is going on here.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like, how do you decide who's right when you have two such different interpretations?
And some experts have also pointed out that, smiley face graffiti, it really is everywhere. It's like the most basic, most common symbol you can think of. So maybe, just maybe, it really is just a coincidence. Maybe we're seeing patterns where there aren't any.
Right, like our brains are wired to find patterns.
Exactly. But let's play devil's advocate for a minute, okay? Let's just entertain this idea, this theory for a moment.
Okay.
What if there really is this group, this network of killers operating in the shadows? And what if they're really good at what they do? What if they're so good at staging these deaths to look like accidents that nobody even suspects anything?
Yeah, Like they're getting away with it.
Exactly. And what if the smiley face, what if it's not meant for us to see? What if it's not a message for the public or for the cops? What if it's a message for them, for the killers themselves? Like a way of saying, hey, we were here, like a secret handshake.
Ooh, okay. That's even creepier.
Yeah. Right. And think about it. If it's just a random smiley face, nobody's going to think twice about it. It's the perfect cover.
Hmm. So it's like hiding in plain sight.
Exactly. And the podcast episode, it mentions that Gannon and his team, they're still looking into this. They're still gathering information, building their case.
So they haven't given up.
No, they haven't. They've got timelines. They've even noticed that there seem to be more of these deaths at certain times of the year, like around holidays.
Wow, really?
Yeah, which is, pretty scary to think about. Like, what if this is all true? What if these guys are still out there?
Yeah, that's pretty unsettling.
So what do you think? I mean, we've laid out the theory. We've looked at some of the evidence. We've heard the counter arguments. What's your gut feeling?
Hmm. It's a tough one. I mean, it's definitely a creepy theory. And the fact that these detectives are so convinced that they're still working on it after all this time, that's something, you know?
Yeah.
It's hard to just brush it off.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, nobody's saying that this theory is definitely true. But nobody can say for sure that it's not true either, right? There's still a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, the fact that the FBI hasn't found any concrete evidence to support the theory doesn't necessarily mean that there's nothing there.
Right.
Right.
Maybe they just haven't found the right evidence yet.
Mm.
Or maybe they're looking in the wrong places. Or maybe, just maybe, they're wrong.
Hmm. Well, it's definitely a thought-provoking theory. And it makes you wonder, you know? Makes you think about all the things that could be happening out there that we don't know about, all the secrets and the hidden connections.
Exactly. And it makes you look at something as simple as a smiley face in a whole new light, doesn't it? Like that symbol, it's so innocent, so happy. But now, knowing about this theory, it's hard not to see it as something sinister.
Yeah, it's like it's lost its innocence.
Yeah, I think so. So here's something to think about as you go about your day. In this day and age, with the internet and social media and everything, it's easier than ever for people to connect with each other, right? But it's also easier than ever for people to stay anonymous, to hide in the crowd. So what if there really are these hidden networks out there, these groups of people who are up to no good? And how would we even know? How would we even begin to find them?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a scary thought.
It is, isn't it?
It is. And it makes you wonder, just how much we really know about the world around us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's something for everyone to ponder, I guess.
I think so.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.